I mean, I think the biggest thing is, the Baltimore Ravens are a good football team. And so you tip your hat to them because you knew they were going to come in and play good football, and especially really good defense. That's what they do. And so they were the better football team, on Monday night. That's where it starts. I mean, beyond that, I think, San Francisco obviously has to play better, moving forward. I think, there were some unfortunate things that happened. I mean, so much of the game was based off of turnovers. Whether, Brock made that bad decision down in the red zone, on that early drive, maybe that changes the complexion of things. A couple other things, he gets the one tipped where he was making the right decision off of a corner blitz, and had a little adjustment. It would have been a great play had he avoided, the corner tipping the ball up and it being intercepted. And so, I think it's one of those games that when you have two good football teams, when one team turns the football over, that's usually what's going to happen. The other team takes advantage of it, and the other team gets a big win. I'm not sitting here panicking. Everybody wants to talk about Brock, and it wasn't a good game statistically when you throw 4 interceptions, right? No matter what happens, that's never going to bode well for your team. I still think he made a lot of really good throws in that game. I think we've seen that all year, even in the losses. Everybody wants to point to the losses and just look at touchdowns to interceptions, and I get it. Played the position. I understand why that's critical. But at the same time, you have to go play by play, game by game, and you have to look at a player and how they play. And I think Brock has played really, really well all year long. He's made some mistakes. Yes, he's made some mistakes. He's a young quarterback. He shouldn't even say that. Doesn't matter how young you are. We all make mistakes. We all have those games where we're not at our best, where things don't go in our favor. But I think Brock is a really good quarterback, and I think he's played really, really well all year long. He didn't play his best game in a critical moment against a really good team, and that's what's going to happen when you do that.
I loved reading your two tweets. You had one tweet, it looked like, and then the circumstances required a follow-up tweet yesterday, and you really went in depth on Brock and Lamar and kind of your impressions of that game and all the things coming out of it. And it's funny to look back and see, going through every game this year, Brock had more completions of 10 yards or more against the Ravens than he had in any other game, which maybe is a product and part of the score, but, it's not like they were down 21 most of the game when he was in it. My question for you, Kurt, is about just what you think he was feeling, what it's like to be in that spot. Every time I looked at him and thought, man, he must be a little rattled right now after he had 3 picks and the Ravens extended their lead. The first play of the next drive, he steps up and hits Kittle over the middle, layers it over the linebacker. A really dangerous throw that he makes pretty consistently. And I thought, well, maybe he's not rattled. Maybe he's fine. Maybe it's not in his own head. And I'm sure it's hard to tell to a degree from the TV or even when you're on the field. But what was your impression just of what it looked to you like he was feeling? Did he get loose and fast? Did he get jittery? Those types of things that I guess you look for when a guy is throwing interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is we always have to understand all of these guys, Brock or anybody that plays, Lamar, anybody that plays in this league, we've all had those games where things don't go our direction and we throw interceptions. But we also all have this level of confidence that has gotten us here to say, I'm not going to let the last play affect the next play, or the last game affect the next game. And that's part of playing the position is that, okay, yep, I got to have a short memory. I made a bad decision on the last one. Well, I can't hesitate and then make another bad decision on the next one. I got to go rip it. And, I've said that numerous games in my career. It seemed like I had one game every year where I threw 4 or 5 interceptions in the game. And my approach was always, if I threw 3, I'm going to go down swinging, and I'm going to try to make every play from here, to get us a win. Oh, shoot, I threw number 4. Well, I got to make every play from this point. And so you just play with a level of confidence, believing in who you are and what you're capable of, regardless of whether the result on that last play was what you wanted it to be. And Brock's played a lot of football, and he's had some of these games, and he'll have more of these games. And the bottom line is You can't let it affect you. You can't all of a sudden get conservative or second guess yourself. The best always come back and go, I'm going to go down. So I'm going to believe this next play. I'm going to read the next play the way I would always read it, and I'm going to throw it like I would always throw it. And if it gets intercepted, I'm going to do that on the next play. And so, that to me was what I saw from Brock, is that, yeah, it was bad. Or, you have a tip play. He didn't second guess himself. He kept ripping the football and didn't always work out. That's part of the business, but that's what you want to see, at least me. I don't want to see a guy get conservative. I don't want to see a guy looking for checkdowns in a game like that, knowing checkdowns aren't going to win you that game. And I'm not playing for stats. I'm playing for wins, so you continue to attack. And if it leads to 4 or 5 interceptions, oh, well, and then you move beyond it and you go play your game the next week. So I thought that's what I saw from Brock, that he wasn't getting tentative. He wasn't playing scared because he had made some bad decisions or he had some things go against him. He's playing football, and that's exactly what I want to see from any quarterback.
Kurt Warner joining us here on KNBR, the sports leader. Kurt, how much do the 49ers and Brock Purdy specifically benefit from having seen the Ravens if they wind up meeting again? Is it better to have seen the challenges that defense can put on you?
Well, I mean, I think it can be if you can figure out the way to answer those problems. I'll go back to 2008. We played against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thanksgiving night, and they crushed us. We didn't play very well. They did some things against us that, we hadn't necessarily seen or we weren't prepared for. And so we left that game, and it was obviously a demoralizing game because, playing against another playoff team, and we got crushed. But I remember watching the film after that game and going, okay, if we play these guys again, I got a plan in my head on what we're going to do and how we're going to attack them now that I really understand what they're doing defensively. So we would ultimately end up playing them in the NFC Championship game. And we would beat them in the NFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl that year. And a lot of it, I believe, went back to the time that we played them and understanding what they were trying to do against us and coming up with a counter plan or a plan to be able to attack it. And so I think that can be extremely valuable for a team, but you have to be able to answer those questions. I think the one thing with San Francisco that you always ask is that a lot of times I think they do what they do. Like, this is how we're built. This is what we do. This is what we're good at, and we're going to continue to do that. So it may not be a lot of adjustment, so to speak, offensively, and it may just be understanding how we're going to attack what the Ravens do. Or maybe Kyle and company come back and say, okay, we know what they did to us last time. We're going to adjust our plan, because that's what we did. We always had great flexibility to adjust our plan from week to week. And we went and adjusted our plan for that game, knowing they were probably going to come out and do some of those similar things because they gave us so much problem. So I think that's always the cat and mouse, the chess match of playing teams and then playing teams again. I could go back to 2001 when we played the Patriots, played them in the regular season, and we put up like 400 yards passing against them, and they did something specific. So, we had to go into the Super Bowl when we played them that year and go, okay, are they going to do that same thing? Because we've got to prepare for that in case they do. But knowing Bill Belichick, they're probably going to do some other things as well, so we've got to be prepared for different things. So it's the beautiful part of our game is how you're going to play, what the chess match is going to be, the adjustments in game that you're going to make. But I think seeing a team one time, I think always helps to get a gauge on what they did well against you, so you can prepare for that, if you play them again.
One of the Ravens defenders said after the game, kind of matter-of-factly, Brock Purdy's a spot thrower, so we just had to know his spots and be disciplined and get to the spots that he was going to throw the ball to. Could you explain, what does that mean? And he made it sound very simple. Is it easy to do what they did? Is it repeatable to do what they did? Can the Niners adjust to that? Or, did they find something? Were they able to execute something that other teams just can't execute?
One more time. Repeat the beginning part of the question. What did they say?
He said basically Brock Purdy's a spot thrower, and so we had to know the spots and get to the spots.
Gotcha. Well, I think there's always something to that. And I think it makes sense. Like when I watch San Francisco's pass game, I think they very much are built that way. That, when I play the game, I always play with a certain structure, meaning that I am always trying to isolate or put a defender in conflict when I design a pass play. And so when that happens, I'm trying to get one guy above him and one guy below him, or one guy inside of him, one guy outside of him. So we're trying to stretch that defender. The 49ers don't always do that in their pass game. Whether it's off a play action where they're trying to get a pull on a linebacker or whatever that may be. So they do more of, I think, what you're talking about, spot throwing, where there's a guy, only one guy in a particular area, and you already talked about it, the way Brock layers the ball up over the linebacker. You often realize there's not a guy underneath that linebacker that can pull him down so it makes the throw over the top easier. He's got to kind of just layer it and set it over the linebacker and make that kind of special throw. And so I do believe they have a lot more of that kind of spot throwing, or, hey, my guy's going to be here and this is my first read. Can I find a way to get the ball to him or not? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense to a degree. But, I think there's also layers to that too, is that there's a specific timing where if you want to hit your back foot and throw it, but there's also some freedom to go, okay, if it's not open in kind of that first window, you can hold it and maybe hit the second window around that defender. But, a lot of that plays out to what's the pressure like? Do you have the ability to wait for that second window? And the timing of the other elements around it. So I think it makes sense within what they do offensively that, hey, if we can be in the spot and kind of take away, that hit the back foot, get the ball out, we're always going to have a better opportunity to succeed, forcing Brock to move through his progressions, taking away that first read, which has been such a big part of, what Kyle designs and what they've been good at all year, that it's always going to make the game a little bit harder on your quarterback. And I think they did that.
Kurt, how do you rank the MVP vote for you right now? I mean, I know it changes every week, and that debate can be a little draining based on the fact that there are so few games in the season. But where do things stand for you after what Lamar did, how Purdy played, and then Christian McCaffrey, who played pretty well?
Yeah, I definitely thought Brock was the front runner, going in from a quarterback standpoint. And, I know as well as anybody, how you play at the end of the year has a huge effect on the MVP race. And so it's unfortunate that you can have your bad games early and play well late, and you're going to have a better shot at winning than playing great early and having a bad game late. So Brock probably fell out of that position. And if it's going to go to a quarterback, I think Lamar has, lent because of the way they've played as a team, maybe the front runner there. I think Dak has had a really good year too, although I think Brock's had the best overall year of all these guys, and would still probably be my front runner as a quarterback if you look at the totality of the season. But I just don't know if it'll play out like that because it was such a big game, a big moment, and he has the 4 interceptions. I think that's going to drop him. Dak has played really well also, but hasn't played great in key moments against good teams, so I don't know how much that affects him. Tyreek Hill is a guy that I've thrown out there because I just think, when you look around the league right now, teams are more afraid of Tyreek Hill than maybe anybody else on a football field, And so that, to me, if he breaks the record, I think because the quarterback play, hasn't been, out of this world. We haven't had a guy that, has set all these different records, that I think he should be in the mix if he can set the record, because it will also be in 16 games because he sat out a game. But I think my front runner would probably be Christian McCaffrey right now. I think he's had a phenomenal year. I think he's played well in every game. He's got the stats to back it up across the board. And so he would probably be my vote right now, if I had to, to pick at this point, because I just think he's had a really, really good year, and no quarterbacks have really separated themselves. But I think we all know it is a quarterback award. And I understand why it's a quarterback award. And so does it go again to the best quarterback, even though we haven't had one have, just a year where he's head and shoulders above everybody else, or a year where, he's doing some things that are rare in the league. And so that's kind of how I break it down right now. Again, we've got, 2 more games, and as we've seen, every week and every game, matters. You know, you got Lamar against Miami, who's another really, really good team. So if he has another really good performance and they win big against Miami, maybe that catapults him back up to the top of the list because, you know, who you play and when you play and how you play against them matters.
How about the Christian McCaffrey, Marshall Faulk comparison? Where are they the most similar to you? Is there a spot where they're different?
I mean, I think the similarity is just their flexibility, you know, their versatility to be able to do so many different things and to move them around and use them in a multitude of ways and really create problems for a defense, you know, and create benefits for you offensively. You know, I would still say that I think Marshall is still a better pass catcher, you know, in terms of running routes. I mean, that to me is what made him, you know, the greatest player that I was ever around, but I think one of the greatest running backs to ever play was just you could put him out there and he literally could run routes like a wide receiver. You know, Christian is very, very good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Christian. He's very, very good. I just don't think he's quite as fluid out there as Marshall is. But he is so versatile, and he's so good, and he can run between the tackles, and he can make big plays, and he's really good out in space. I mean, I think there are so many similarities to him being that X factor for this football team, like Marshall was the X factor for us. He was the difference maker. We were built around what he could do and all the things that he could do. And I believe, you know, San Francisco is very much built that way. Granted, they have Debo and CMC, both guys that are those X factors that can do so many different things. And that's what makes them so good is they're positionless, kind of like Marshall was for us.
Kurt, thanks a lot for the time. We really appreciate it. Happy New Year to you, and enjoy these final couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Take care, guys.
All right, Kurt Warner, the legend, the Hall of Famer, the Super Bowl champion. Appreciate him joining us here on The Sports Leader. Good conversation.
American Underdog, that's his movie. Is there going to be a sequel? You don't usually have biographical sequels, but could you do a series and make Brock's American Underdog 2? I mean,
if there was any way to extend the story, I think the Brock Purdy story would probably be the way to do it, right?
I think it's the one. Kurt won. You know, Kurt's been to Super Bowls, won Super Bowls, but he's a Hall of Famer.
He's got Hall of Famer, MVP, Super Bowl champion. So a couple of boxes still left to check for Brock before we get to that sequel. But who knows? Maybe you
don't have to get the MVP. The Super Bowl's enough if you're the last pick of the draft, I think.
But I think if you get the Super Bowl, you're probably more like, I'll say this. Let's say Lamar Jackson wins the MVP, but the 49ers win the Super Bowl. If the 49ers win the Super Bowl, I feel like Brock Purdy's more apt to be the MVP in future years because the fact that he's got the back pocket Super Bowl.
I think it's true.